Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey everybody, I'm Mark Scribner, your host of the Shrimp Tank with my co-host Micah Heel today. And we're actually really excited to bring on Reginald Swift from Rubix Life Science Company in just a minute. We'll bring him on, talk about his company. Reggie is a friend of mine, and we actually have a common thread in that we both lost one of our parents to cancer. I took the route of fundraising for cancer. Reginald was able to take his engineering background and work on his company, and we're going to explore that a little bit. I would like to remind our listeners that we are nationally syndicated through iHeartRadio. You can find this particular podcast on Google, Apple, anywhere that you want to download your podcast. And what we like to say here is a tagline is where book smarts and street smarts collide. So I think I might have just lost Micah to a thunderstorm. I'm not sure if he's going to come back, but we're going to continue and plow forward with the technology if that's okay. Reggie, thanks for coming on the show today. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really good to reconnect again and, really help share the message of what we're doing and what we're working on to the world.
So let's talk about, I've always been impressed offline talking to you about your story, and we talked about the common story of losing a relative to cancer. My mom passed away at 61. I know you were very, very close with your dad. But one of the cool parts about speaking with exciting entrepreneurs is that at some point there was a light or an inspiration that you came up with a business. And maybe can you talk a little bit about your start in this particular endeavor?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So where it all started was just as you mentioned, the catalyst was my father passing away from stage 4 lymphatic cancer, 7 years ago today. 7 years ago next month, actually. So for me, thank you. And for me, I was already in Boston at the time, but I saw a lot of great opportunity to be able to learn about innovation. And because of where I was in engineering, I saw a lot of great opportunity to really get myself and my background from what I've done in aerospace into a new industry of biotech. And, as welcoming as Boston can be and Cambridge can be, learning about biotech has this high barrier to entry. And me explore those pathways what I wanted to accomplish to learn about biotech and medical devices and pharma. I found a way in, and I was driven to do so. So the ability for me to then get into the industry through several companies, through consulting and working with them, learning about the FDA, learning about regulatory, learning about product development, learning about the way that processes that they incorporate themselves in. I knew at one point that it was my pathway, my runway to really get started, because I had a specific vision of merging science, engineering, biotech, and social economic issues into one area to help catalyze innovation for diseases, to kill diseases, right? We want to eradicate diseases. That's our mission. And we know that it's gravely affected African Americans much more so than any other population, and we have geared our sights to bring in equity in that space too through our innovations.
So it's interesting that you said that. I would like to expand on that. You talked about barriers and things like that, and then with your background, you noticed that there was a niche or a certain segment of our population just wasn't being served. Of all those things kind of coming together for you with when the business particularly started?
Initially, no, we were just more so as, we can help develop product, we can help get it out to market, and we focus on those things because we knew that on the lower end of the spectrum, that's really how we would keep our lights on, right? To be able to mobilize ourselves to be an R&D organization to help do product development and to move forward. And as we were actually creating our own product, what we started understanding, what we started seeing was that we got our products in clinical trials. We were able to help companies get their products in clinical trials, but yet as we were looking at protocols and as we were looking at the enrollment and engagement, we saw a lopsided effort being made to have people inclusive in clinical trials. So that's when we started shifting our business model to say, now we can be able to create innovations to get people included in clinical trials, because the products have to work for the people that are going to be able to be in it, right? For diseases. Everybody is afflicted with diseases, but not everybody is served the same way. So now we want to design better processes as well as products to help better serve those afflicted with cancers and diseases.
So take a quick moment to welcome Micah back. He was the victim of a lightning storm in his studio, but welcome back.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank you.
to see you. Yeah, absolutely. So
One of the questions I had for you, for Reggie, was, are you finding that everyone is more focused on COVID-19 and less focused on other areas of health and disease? Are you experiencing any difficulties, with funding, things like that?
I'm actually glad that you mentioned that. For us, we actually found that, yeah, there is a strong concerted effort for COVID-19 response, right? From the commercial community, as well as the federal government. What we also started seeing happen for the disparities between treatment for COVID-19, it actually catalyzed our mission even more. It actually augmented and have people wanted to do business with us because of what we did for other disease modalities. And from there, that we were able to use that as a launching pad to say, listen, this is how we've actually created products to help better serve the communities that actually need it, especially with one of our leading platforms called StarSense, to help better manage and speak to the patient and really help them go through the clinical trial process with enrollment and engagement, really understanding research, and really at the back end to help pull real world evidence to bolster the FDA response for designing and developing ways to serve those types of communities. So it's really been a great opportunity for us. And we've been able to look at grants and contracts, federal contracts to date, and we've been successful in a few. So, we're looking to catalyze that even more.
Yeah, I was curious about, what you had mentioned in prior is what you refer to as combination therapies. Could you maybe expand on that? Like, I think I know what that means, but what, in your terms, what is a combination therapy? Is it a device? Is it medication?
I'm glad that you mentioned that. So many people see it now with the advent of software, right? Many people see it with using different modalities to serve the same purpose, right? To target the same indication for a disease. The way we've done our combination products before was to merge both a medical device, implantable medical device, as well as a pharmaceutical agent to be housed in the same unit to serve a specific purpose, to either treat, be an aid for treatment, to either be the treatment, or to be able to have data pulled because of learning from the treatment plan and the treatment regimen. So that is kind of how we focus our efforts before. And it's because of that methodology that we've used in the past, we're now applying it to software, to now have integrative software with devices to be able to tell a story on how the progression of health is being able to be attributed to successes of treatment therapies through clinical trials or even post-market surveillance. So those, for real world products that are actually out there and about in the real world. So it's starting to take a life of its own. That combination products are now expanding as far as definition is concerned, but it really started from that aspect alone.
Yeah, I mean, being New England based, I mean, I'm sure you tap on the likes of like the MITs, all the teaching hospitals and things like that, but you also have the 100-pound gorillas in New England. I mean, are you looked as competition partner? Like, how do you position yourselves in these behemoths that are in New England with the, the budgets and stuff that are really substantial? And looks like we lost Micah one more time.
No, great question. Great question, Mark. So with what we've experienced so far in the New England region, right? Many of the organizations have yet to really try to explore combination products, right? We know that startups and small companies can mobilize much quicker than a lot of the behemoths that you see. So a lot of the behemoths, like Johnson and Johnson and, Boston Scientific, Medtronic, many other groups would try to partner with those organizations. But for us, because of what the purpose that we're trying to serve, we have not yet seen that type of collaborative effort being made on that behalf to try to work with us on some of the specificity of what we're looking to do, right? As far as being able to hyper target some of the combination devices and what we're doing for health inequities through innovation in many of those areas. So it's still a challenge for us because we know that we can go into the politics of it. Being a minority in New England has its own difficulties, but being a biotech minority entrepreneur is even a greater challenge because there's more opportunities, but yet there's still that same squeeze on being able to matriculate those type of opportunities.
How do you handle that? Like, what's your approach to when you're faced with that kind of hurdle? Like, what is your approach?
To be honest, we actually went to DC, and for us, we started networking in DC and Virginia and Maryland, and we started collaborating with those organizations that have realized, and many of the large companies have footprints in these areas as well. So now being able to network with these organizations in these areas of the opportunity areas that we like to work in with federal grants, innovation grants, contracts, now we're able to freely share the same purpose and the mission of what we're actually trying to achieve. So many of those organizations now see the relevance of what we're actually trying to do. And sometimes the work does get back to its counterparts here in New England, and we're able to have further discussions from there. And we're starting to see that take place over the life of our company now. We're only 4.5 years old, but we're starting to see much more openness for organizations to really network with us.
And how does that not kill your morale when you're fighting City Hall and all kinds of stuff out of your control? Like, how do you handle that psychologically? Is it just the mission speaks for itself, and you believe?
For me, so I mean, wake up, sleep, believing in my mission. I created this company because of what my father couldn't have realized, that the VA was under-resourced to be able to source his need for a clinical trial that could have extended his life by 5-10 years. And just to understand that's happening, I now want to make that my core and central focus to ensure that takes place across not just the United States, but across the world for many other folks that have experienced the same, effects. And we believe in that, and I believe in that 200%. So I go to sleep, I wake up, drinking my dreams, if you will. Coffee's great, but dreams is better.
I have to tell you, I have a chill up the back of my spine. It's extremely motivational, and you're a great guy for that. And again, we have that commonality. You're just doing it a little differently, which is amazing. So tell me about, every entrepreneur, you have this arc of being in business for 4 years. What are some of the challenges that you've had to face outside, which obviously I can't relate being a white guy, and it's just the world is my oyster and it's not fair, but I can't be sitting here, obviously commenting on knowing how that is. But back to your entrepreneurial hat in dealing with funding and capitalization and stuff like that, are there any lessons that you can impart to our listeners that are starting businesses and need capital and want to start in a journey like you're doing now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that I've learned early on is that you don't always have to go for VC or investor funding immediately. Tell your story and let your mission speak for itself. There are ways that you can gain funding through partnership organizations, through federal contracts, through state, local contracts, and grants that you can be able to design your business around so that other people can resonate the mission for you, rather than you are. Of course, I'm always going to be my own cheerleader. Other startups and founders are going to be their own cheerleaders. However, you need a massive surge to be able to have that resonate across communities so people can hear about you, learn about you. And I've been lucky enough where that's exactly what's been happening for us, that we made products that actually make sense of what we're actually trying to do and why it actually is important. And for us, we thought we needed to go for VC funding at first. We thought we needed to go for these types of investor funding, and we know that the horizon to raise that is 18 to 20 months, maybe 24 at best. So that's the valley of death for minority entrepreneurs, because many of them don't start out capitalized. Many of them start out with the money out of their pockets or their wallets. I started a business with $600, right?
Yeah.
And through ingenuity, through being able to mobilize our consulting services that help create these opportunities that we have now, we had to be thinking out of the box, and we had to focus our efforts to be interdependent on other activities that we can do in an interim to help raise our own money. And I would say the same thing to a lot of the entrepreneurs. Think of those types of ways to do the same thing.
Now, being 4 years old, obviously, and I don't want to label you the wrong way, but you have an engineering background that's pretty extensive, and now you're an entrepreneur and a founder and wearing many, many hats. How do you juggle kind of the technical aspects that you're very proficient in, but also having to wear like the fundraising hat, the HR hat, the technology, all those different things that you do as an entrepreneur? Like how do you divide those in your brain?
Oh, and it is not easy, Mark. I tell you one thing, that the hardest part of the job is that. But of course, it's the most rewarding, right? Being able to share your mission with a lot of other people that wants to be a part of your mission as well. However, to be able to manage it on a day-to-day basis, it isn't easy. But the way I try to, splinter my time is to focus on the heavier lifting items, more so towards the morning, and strategy towards the mornings. Only because I want to have a lot of that effort and have people come in to be able to mobilize what we're looking to do from a task-oriented level to a mission-oriented level to help, emanate and really structure the way that we would like to see future successes for. Having people come in to help, do designs and engineering studies and do engineering development to do pharmaceutical sciences, to have people focus on that area, to have people focus on the soft skills, on really talking with people, so it can help my time to focus on a higher level items like fundraising or going after federal contracts or grants or even greater items. And I could do check-ins with my team, my core team, weekly on kind of where we are for ensuring that the mission is still going according to plan.
Yeah, you're probably one of the best people I've ever met networking too, and connecting the dots with the relationships and stuff. So I know you put a lot of time into that as well, which is obviously very critical to running a business and growing.
Absolutely.
So as you know, where book smarts and street smarts collide, being 4 years, could you give us some examples, if you have any, of some things that you would like to do over as an entrepreneur, or maybe just probably wasted your time and said, I'd never do that again? Is there anything in that category?
Well, I would say that every opportunity is a learning present, it's a learning position, right? So I would say that, yes, there were probably areas that I would probably not focus or devote as much time as I did before, as going out to networking events that were outside of the scope of the industry, to thinking that it would have, network effects to, partner with people. It really didn't lead to as much engine or fuel for us as early as possible, as we thought it was going to be possible. So if I were to devote more time, again, I would definitely circle myself back into focus on mission specific directives, rather than just trying to be out and about and just have anybody know us. Because what's more important is the right people knowing us instead of just everybody knowing us.
The focus, yeah. I like often kid is you want to pitch your money tent where the money floweth, and if you're networking in an industry that's not synergistic, or it's okay to meet people, but it's not really the focus that you really want. And,
exactly.
sounds like that's one of the things. Is there anything else out there? I mean, that's a great example of being highly focused on networking and your audience and being around the right types of people. But are there any other words of wisdom or entrepreneurial ideas that you have?
Oh, absolutely. Now, as far as when you talk about product development, always think about what's the specific horizon of where it actually, or where your actual product is actually going to be positioned and marketed towards. Because of course, for us, we failed at a lot of products that we actually designed and developed. From 20 products that we developed, 3 of them are successful. And if we, knowing what we know now from the graveyard, and of course, just as we know from the industry as a whole, not a lot of products will see the light of day, right? Either through acquisitions or because of product failures and other things of that nature, right? But if we were to strategically, position ways of harmonizing product development efforts, I think much more of our successes would have been attributed to our early works and our earlier projects.
Is that typical in your industry to be having call it a 200 batting average? Is that how, this particular sector, do you approach that?
In this essence, yes. Yeah, in essence, that's usually how it is, only because there's so much variability of how products can fail, why products should work and it doesn't. And there's just a high, as you were saying earlier, barrier to having, products matriculated to serve its best purpose. Sometimes there could be a good product, but it just doesn't have the right marketing behind it because nobody knows how to talk about it or articulate it. So it never really sees the light of day. And much to the successes of other products that have made impact, such as, the cardiovascular medicines and diabetic medicines and, everything else, there are even a greater amount. And look at the Alzheimer's trials. There's a heavy amount of products in that graveyard, and not one has seen success as of yet into that market.
A lot of money being thrown at it. In your world, every disease has a certain population, right? Obviously, you think bigger ones like cancer and diabetes and heart disease and stuff like that. But is the pushback generally on a product, are these partners looking at sheer market size, or are they taking the greater view of the world and saying it could be a small population that has a very specialized disease, but are they looking at the economics primarily when they're saying yes to these deals?
I'm glad that you're asked. So I think most of the deals are driven through economics, only because they want to have the high value return, and because of the pricing and the cost to develop it is high. They're looking at being able to strategically position themselves, with the regulatory bodies like the FDA, other, licensing, in licensing, out licensing deals to structure deals with patient provider networks, hospital systems, and the like, just to make sure that there's a strength and a surge of those products that actually can be consistent and have sustainability within a given market size. That's why there hasn't been a lot of products developed for rare and orphan diseases, because it's so intricate and it's so specific, where because of the market size that it pales in comparison to the oncology space. That's why you've seen a greater number of products being developed for heart disease rather than pecan or any other rare disease that's out there right now. So it's rare disease is starting to take over in market share. It's starting to grow, but we know now that the shift in that identity will start taking place over the next 10, 20 years to actually start equalizing those types of benefits.
That makes sense. And so we talked about this offline too, but it's probably not a fair analogy, but like the Swiss watchmakers for a long time didn't see the world change when digital watches came. Their business model was their business model, and then all of a sudden their sales just completely went down. Tell me about like the worlds where you hear all this talk about genome and the therapies, really just kind of trying to sequence genome or change some signals and stuff. What do you think the probability of something like that is? And then how will you benefit from that if you can?
Oh, absolutely. So, as you know, the Human Genomic Project started back in the 90s, right? It started, I think, 98.
Mhm. Hold on for a second. Lost you there.
All right, here I am. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah, back in the 90s, there was a Human Genomic Project that actually started. Much of the effort at the time was because of gene splicing, being able to mutate and have, being able to be cloned or other humans to be cloned. So there was a massive effort to really get that started. However, because of where we've gone to, because of other technologies like CRISPR and Cas9 and other focused biologics and human-derived therapies, the Genomic Project really just took a backseat to all of that. So they didn't realize on how to capitulate on using CRISPR to be able to map out the genomic project or the human genome, knowing that many of the diseases and the disease modalities and the configurations of disease actually is based on genomic data sets that we need to configure to better design therapies around the patient population sets that we can actually have information towards from the genome project. So now positioning back into place, we see an opportunity for us at least, because now organizations and even the FDA are starting to ask about real world evidence because of how do you know that this product will work for not just this group, but also this group too. And we can't approve you until you can prove that that can be the case, right? Because we need to see more data sets in clinical trials for making sure that it actually does work. Have you considered the implications? Have you considered epidemiological data sets or other models of diseases against these types of genomes or biological structures that impact different patients? And that's starting to now take shape. So now being able to merge that type of information to disease and designing therapies for diseases, I think is going to be that next wave of those type of opportunities. Now it's going to be on us to try to create the vehicles such as digital health, virtual technologies, to merge with the simple R&D efforts to really tell the story of how successful products can actually be if
Absolutely.
they focus it on the solutioning for everyone else.
And back to the economics. And again, I'm not an expert in this particular space, but from my understanding, like a drug, like these bigger pharma companies, there has to be a B behind it in terms of the economic opportunity, primarily because of the failure rate, the amount of R&D that's required. But do you find that to be a frustrating thing if you're coming up with a concept and it just whatever the executives across the table are looking at, like, it's not $1 billion drug, it's not $1 billion solution. Do you find that is your experience when you're kind of bringing concepts to market?
So I'm glad that you asked. So it's it's a combination of a number of different variables, right? So it just has to be the right time at the right place. Many organizations are thriving on trying to be entrepreneurial. However, most of the times is that they're trying to mitigate as much risk towards the development cycle as much as possible. So yeah, you can have an innovative product, but if you don't have enough data behind it, then you'll probably find it difficult to actually find partners to help you in that space. So many of the large organizations are requiring smaller companies come up with enough data sets, which will overextend themselves financially to really say, okay, now we can talk and pick this up for you, with you, and help develop it. So now that comes into place where we're talking about financing again and being able to capitalize on that market share for what people can actually see in true to form. There's been areas where there's been blockbuster drugs that has never seen the light of day, and it actually worked only because it just didn't have enough funding behind it. And that's just kind of how the industry has been. It's just there's high amount of competition, but I think it's been focused more so in economics rather than the innovation itself.
Yeah. So, and that just is the haves and the have-nots. It seems like the big get bigger, the smaller. If they're requiring those data sets, that's a cost of playing business, but they make it difficult to do it if they're adding those extra requirements. And does that come from the FDA or is that coming from the potential partners?
It could be a little bit of both, because of course there has to be enough rigor, scientific rigor, and even process rigor to ensure that you've thought about and considered a lot of these processes and these variables in place before you actually get started with experimenting from a preclinical stage and even get into phase 1 safety studies. Even your large partners are looking for that type of reasoning as well. Do you have enough of that rigor already mapped out? If you don't have that data, but do you have the rigor mapped out to ensure that the risk is mitigated to the effect where, okay, maybe we can now think about this and make an investment into this area to help grow this pipeline for you or for us.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So give me, we're going to wrap up in just a sec, but give me a sense of what's going to happen in the next year or two. Like, what's your vision of where this is going to go? Are you interested in selling, partnering? Like, what's going to happen in the next year?
So for us, in these last if anything about COVID has taught us anything, is that it takes a massive amount of partnering to actually solve one problem in health sciences, right? So for us, we see a massive amount of partnering that we're actually not just realizing and matriculating, but also see that vision on other areas as well, not just with COVID, but for other diseases. And now because of where we're positioning ourselves in health inequities and being able to have innovation to address it, we're now seeing that horizon open up. We're now seeing those focus areas starting to open themselves to saying, listen, this is where we can actually take your product and expand the market even more. So when we talk about Alzheimer's, companies are going back into Alzheimer's research and starting to launch clinical trials into that area. But now we can equip what we're doing for the innovation aspect and digital health to say, listen, this is how much more successful this product can be, because now you get these data sets included. And from a real world evidence, we can have this genomic data set for you to give you that credence and that reason to design your studies around having much more robust studies, have these much more robust inclusion criteria in there, and even recruit robustly nationally or even globally in a number of different areas. So we're seeing that come true to form, and we want to be a part of that.
Well, I think that speaks volumes about who you are. You're looking at some adversity with COVID, finding the opportunity, and that's exactly. Every time we speak, I get to hear, how optimistic you are, and it's actually just a great tribute.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up here, but for our listeners who want to know more about you, want to be able to follow you, what's the best way to get a hold of you, Reginald? Oh,
absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can look my company up, Rubix LS. That's Rubix, RUBIXLS, and Reginald Swift as well. You could find me being a cheerleader on LinkedIn. You can even find me on Twitter. Sometimes I try to go there, but with my schedule, it's just always so difficult. But I'm happy to make connections with all of you. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for your time today, Reginald, and we wish you much success. We know you're going to continue to push it forward and make a big difference.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was a pleasure being here today and reconnecting again. Take care.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.